Grief comes in 5 neat little stages lied to you. Grief doesn't follow a schedule. It ambushes your ass. You were fine 5 minutes ago, laughing at something on your phone, making coffee, making something to eat, watching Netflix, doing laundry, normal shit. And then a song comes on. Or you smell her perfume. You smell his cologne. Or the food they used to make. Or you reach for your phone and you start to call them and you remember halfway through the phone call that they're not here anymore. And just like that, you're on the fucking floor. Physically on the floor. Your knees buckle. The air leaves your body. And you're gasping for breath. And you're sitting on the kitchen floor at 2 p.m. on a fucking Tuesday wondering how the fuck is the world still spinning when the most important person in your life is gone. I feel you. I've been there. We've all lost someone. And that shit sucks ass. You thought you had a hold of it. Maybe you had a good week, maybe a good month. People told you it gets easier with time. And you were starting to believe their ass. And now you're back to square one, gasping for air in the middle of an ordinary Tuesday on the kitchen floor. And the guilt you feel, because you weren't just grieving the person you lost, you were grieving who you were while they were still here. That one hits me in the chest. If that's you, I can fucking relate big time. Every missed phone call, every visit you put off, every I'll do it tomorrow that turned into never, and now never is permanent. People say there are 5 stages to grief: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. Like it's a checklist you can work through. Like grief is a project with milestones. You're not moving through the stages though, right? You're moving through the wreckage. And nobody warned you it would feel like this. If you've ever been punched by grief when you thought you were over it, stay with me, because what's happening in your head has a name, and it's not weakness. The 5 stages of grief, they were never meant for you or any of us. A woman named Elizabeth Ross published those stages in 1969 in a book she wrote called On Death and Dying. And here's what most people don't know. She wasn't studying people who lost someone. She was studying people who were fixing to die themselves. They were terminally ill. The 5 stages were about how sick and ill the patients was and how they were processing their emotions while they were approaching their death. The model was never designed as a roadmap for people who are still living who have lost someone. The research was for the people who were dying. But it got adopted by the mainstream, and it turned into posters, self-help books, therapist handouts, and suddenly everyone believes grief is supposed to be something you move through in a straight line, linear, from denial to acceptance, like it's a checklist. But it doesn't do that. And if you ever lost someone, you know that shit to be true. Research has shown that for decades. A psychologist named George Bonanno from the University of Columbia studied this for 20 years. He studied sadness, loss, and mourning experienced after the death of a loved one. His research, published across multiple studies, he found that there is no universal sequence. People don't move through predictable stages. It's not linear. Some people experience intense grief immediately, for months or years in some cases. And then out of nowhere, you get hit like a semi-truck. Some go between functioning normally to falling apart, back and forth for years. Roughly 10 to 15% of people do that. What doctors call prolonged grief disorder. Grief that doesn't fade. that doesn't shift, that doesn't resolve on its own. You're not doing grief wrong. Grief doesn't have a wrong. But here's what it does have. It has neuroscience. And once you understand what your brain is actually doing when you're grieving someone, the loss of someone, you'll stop wondering why you can't just move on like everyone's saying. Your brain isn't broken. It's searching. Let me tell you exactly what that means. When you lose someone, your brain does something almost cruel. It keeps looking for them, even though they're gone. A neuroscientist named Mary Frances O'Connor at the University of Arizona, she has done some of the most important brain imaging work on grief. She put people that lost someone inside an MRI scanner and showed them photos and personal items of the person they lost. What she found changed how science understands grief forever. The nucleus accumbens, that's the part of your brain's reward and craving system, the same system for addiction. It lit up like a Christmas tree during grief. Not the sadness part of your brain, the craving part of your brain, the same part of your brain that creates craving for a drug, was activated by the absence of a person. Think about that for a minute. Your brain processes you losing someone you love through the same system that processes withdrawal from drugs or alcohol. You're not just sad, you're experiencing a neurological craving. You're literally withdrawing for the person who is no longer here or no longer there that you lost. O'Connor describes this as brain mapping. It's a brain mapping problem. Your brain has spent years, sometimes decades, building a map of the world that included that person. They're in your morning routine. They're there in the holidays. They're in the sound your phone makes when it rings. Your brain has a prediction. This person will be here. And now that that person is not here, your brain keeps predicting that they will still show up. It keeps searching, expecting, reaching, and every time reality doesn't match that prediction, you feel that stab of loss all over again, like a wave. That's why grief ambushes you. Your brain hasn't updated the map yet. It hasn't updated that they're gone. That song on the radio, your brain predicted the person would be there to hear it with you. The empty chair at Thanksgiving, your brain has predicted someone would be there sitting in it. Reaching for your phone, your brain hasn't deleted that habit yet. You're not going crazy. Your brain's running an outdated map of a world that sadly no longer exists. And that's just what happens with the reward system. Your stress system is even more crucial. Grief doesn't just live in your head, it rewires your body. When someone central to your life, someone important to you, someone you love dies, your hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, the HPA axis, your body's stress response system goes into fucking overdrive. Cortisol floods your blood. Your immune function drops. Your sleep patterns get screwed up. And your inflammatory markers shoot through the roof. This is why grieving people get sick. It's not coincidence. Research published in the Psychosomatic Journal of Medicine found that individuals suffering from the loss of a loved one showed measurably elevated inflammatory markers and suppressed immune responses for months after illness, sometimes for years. There's even a phenomenon called Takotsubo cardiomyopathy, broken heart syndrome. Grey's Anatomy has an episode with this on it. I think it was Grey's Anatomy. Not that I watch Grey's Anatomy, but anyway. The sudden emotional stress to the heart muscle can temporarily weaken it and cause it to balloon out. People literally die from grief. That's not a metaphor. It's a medical event, and it's true. You can literally die from your sadness. You're feeling sadness from the absence of a loved one. And the cognitive effects are just as brutal. Grief fog, the state where you can't think straight. You can't remember anything, you can't remember what day it is, you can't find your keys, you can't maintain a fucking conversation. That's not weakness. That's your prefrontal cortex being overwhelmed by the volume of emotional processing your brain is doing when you lose someone. There's only so much bandwidth you got in your head, and the grief takes it all fucking up. The brain prioritizes survival. Remember that. When your stress system is running at full capacity, processing a major loss, the higher cognitive functions, planning, thinking, focusing, memory, decision making, get deprioritized. Your brain is doing fucking triage on your ass. Grief is now the emergency. This is why people in acute grief can't make decisions, can't go back to work, they can't remember to eat. It's not that they're not trying to do those things. Their brain has temporarily reallocated its resources to process the loss. Everything else gets what's left over. So your brain is searching for someone who's gone. Your body is in a state of emergency, and your thinking is compromised. And on top of all that, there's the guilt. There's something nobody tells you about when you lose someone. Sometimes the grief isn't the hardest part. The regret is. Grief is about them. It's the absence of them. It's the pain of losing them. The hole someone leaves when they're gone. You miss their voice, you miss their laugh, you miss who they were. Regret is about you. It's the pain of what you did or you didn't do while they were still here. It's the weight of wasted time, the calls you didn't make, the visits you skipped, the words you never said. Grief says they're gone and it hurts. Regret says they're gone and you wasted time you had when they were here. And here where it gets neurologically dangerous. Regret requires something. Grief doesn't. It requires looking at yourself honestly. It requires feeling the full weight of your own fucking failures. And what the weight is too much. When the guilt of who you were threatens to destroy you, your brain does something very dramatic, very drastic. Their brain has temporarily reallocated its resources to process the loss. Everything else gets whatever's left over. So your brain is searching for someone that's gone. Your body is in a state of emergency, and your thinking is compromised. And on top of all that shit, there's the guilt. There's something people don't tell you about when you lose someone. Sometimes the grief isn't the hardest part. The regret is. Grief is about them. It's the pain of absence. The hole someone leaves in your life when they're gone. You miss their voice. You miss their laugh. You miss who they were. Regret is about you and the pain of what you did or didn't do while they were here. It's the weight of wasted time, the calls you didn't make, the visits you skipped, the words you never said. Grief says they're gone and it hurts. Regret says they're gone and you wasted the time you had. And here's where it gets neurologically dangerous. Regret requires something grief doesn't. It requires looking at yourself honestly. It requires feeling the full weight of your own failures. And when that weight is too much, when the guilt of who you were threatens to destroy you, your brain does something very drastic. It numbs you, or it medicates you, or it shuts you down entirely. Self-medication after loss isn't random. It's a predictable neurological response to grief. combined with regret. Both of them combined. The substance, the drug, doesn't fix anything, but it does stop the regret from running. It pauses the loop. If only I had. And it pauses, why didn't I just... It pauses it long enough so you can breathe. I told you in my depression video that depression and addiction are business partners. Grief is the third partner in that relationship. Loss triggers depression. Depression opens the door for the drugs and the alcohol. And the drugs buries the regret so deep, so it buries it so you can function until the drugs don't work anymore. And you're in a hotel room wondering how you got there. That happened to me. And that's not theory. That's my life. Let me tell you what grief actually looks like when it hits someone who was already running. I've lost two people who mattered to me: my stepfather Albert and my grandmother. Al died first. The man who loved me through actions. The quiet man, the provider, the one who showed up every day and gave me everything he had. And I fought him the whole fucking time because my brain couldn't recognize love that didn't come from chaos. He died in South America. And then they told us he died in a car accident, but I don't believe that. He was in the military. What matters is what I felt at the funeral. I felt the grief, I felt the loss, I felt the absence. I mean, I cried. The heavy quiet of someone being gone, I felt. But I didn't feel regret. I didn't feel guilty until years later. I didn't feel the weight of disrespecting a man who only ever tried to love me. I didn't feel the shame of throwing that love back in his face. And the reason I didn't feel it is the same neuroscience I just talked about. My brain was already building walls. Emotional numbing is what they call it. The dorsal vagal system shutting things down because the pain was too much. My nervous system let me feel the grief because that was manageable. But regret required me to look at myself honestly. And my brain said, we're not doing that. It's too much. So the regret got locked away. And I walked out of the funeral and I was okay. My brother, on the other hand, he was devastated. I haven't heard him talk about him since he passed. Two sons, two totally different relationships while he was alive. And then my grandmother died. And when she died, something cracked in me. Not just grief for her or him. Everything came flooding through that crack at once. The regret for her and the regret for my stepdad. The two people I treated very poorly while I was out on the streets being a knucklehead. I was too busy for them. That guilt wasn't sadness. It was a weight I've never felt before. Like something dropped on my chest. And I didn't know what to do with it. I didn't have the tools or I didn't have the language back then. I didn't know what to call it, let alone have the language. I told you in a previous video, my demons started in my childhood. That's the name of the video. My demons started in my childhood. By the time my grandmother died, I'd been self-medicating for years already. I've been doing drugs already. But the grief from losing her got mixed with regret. And it got mixed with guilt. And that took me to self-medication. They took my self-medication from recreational to survival. I was getting high, not to die on the inside, That's the spiral to the hotel room. The one I mentioned in my first video, the shitty hotel room where I overdosed in 2016. That spiral didn't start with the drug. It started with grief I couldn't carry and regret I couldn't face. 9 years sober since I got clean. I'm 50 years old, and I'll tell you something. The grief has changed, but it doesn't knock me to the floor anymore. But the regret, when the regret visits, it still feels like it's going to destroy me. But I use that pain positively now. I used to run from it, but now I redirect its energy, I guess. It's atonement for them, not forgiveness. I haven't forgiven myself, actually. I probably never will. I don't know. That's what grief looked like. It was grief and regret. Now let me show you what to do with your grief and regret if you're carrying it. First, stop grading yourself on the 5 stages. Throw that shit out the window. Your grief doesn't have to have a timeline, and it doesn't need one. Some days you'll be fine, some days you won't be. The back and forth isn't failure. Research actually calls it the dual process model, and it shows that healthy grieving actually involves moving back and forth between pain and being okay. You can cry, and then you can do your laundry. You fall apart, then you rebuild. That rhythm is the healing, that back and forth. Second, let your brain update the map. The research shows that the brain's behavior of searching gradually diminishes as it integrates into a new reality. But only if you allow yourself to encounter the reminders. If you're avoiding the triggers, then it's not going to work. You have to accept the triggers and engage in them. That way the old map doesn't get frozen in your head. You have to let them in a little at a time, though, so your brain can slowly accept what's changed. Third, separate from your grief. Separate your grief from your regret. They're different pains, and they need different responses. Grief needs space, time, and presence. Regret needs honesty and action. If you're carrying around guilt about how you showed up while they were alive, or how you didn't show up, write that down in a letter. Not to send, not to mail, just to say the words. Just to see the words on paper. And that will help get it out of your head. Because it's been locked in your head for so long. Fourth, protect your body. Take care of your body during grief. Your immune system is compromised, your sleep is disrupted, your cortisol is highly elevated. This is not the time to prove that you're a tough guy or tough girl. Eat when you don't feel like eating. Sleep when you think it's impossible. Move if you can. Just walk around the house. Your brain cannot process grief if your body is falling apart. That isn't self-care. That's advice. If grief has shifted over the 12 months, if grief hasn't shifted in the 12 months, then you need to talk to somebody. Not because you're weak, because prolonged grief is a real clinical condition, and it responds positively to treatment, to therapy. Grief is supposed to change over time. It's not supposed to be caught in this neurological loop. It's not healthy. And in order for you to get back on the road to being okay, you have to deal with the grief. you're not going to be the, people might tell you, you need to get back to being who you were. I disagree. I think grief, regret, they change you. And I think the question shouldn't be, how do I get back to who I used to be? The question should be, who am I? Who do I become now that I can't tell you how the regret hurts. All I can try to do is be the person that become the person that I should have been while they were alive. I don't know what else to do but that. That's why I started this channel, I guess. If you're dealing with loss, if you just lost somebody, I'm sorry. It's gonna be tough. I'm praying for you. If you're gonna use tonight, please don't be alone. Obviously, I want you to get clean. If you're gonna drink tonight, please don't drive. This is Get Up, Fight Back. This is Richard Rich. I'll check you guys out on the next one. Peace.